Hi Year 2. Today we're going to have a science lesson all about something called food chains. You're going to need a pencil and a piece of paper to complete the activities after the lesson. So let's start by thinking about energy. Where do you think you get the energy from to go out and ride your bike? Or go for a run? Or go and play in the park? Where does that energy come from? Comes from your food, from the food that you eat. So we say to you, you need to have lots of carbohydrates to have slow release energy. Now, all living creatures, all living things need food because they need energy from their food. And a food chain just shows how this energy is passed between different living creatures. It shows basically who is eating what inside a habitat. Now, a food chain starts at the bottom with something called a producer. And I've got here some examples of producers. I've got a tree and some grass and some algae, some ponds, flowers, corn and a bush over there. What do you think a producer could be then? It's a plant. So all food chains start with plants and they're called producers. Now they're called producers because they make their own food. So plants use the sun to create their own food. They are producers. So your food chain will start at the bottom with a plant. Now on the food chain next, you will find your consumers. And there's loads here if you take a little look at. Consumers. Now if producers make their own food, consumers have to eat. They have to eat plants or other animals as their food. Now consumers come in three types. We've got our herbivores, carnivores and omnivores. Can you remember what each of those words mean? Herbivores only eat plants. Carnivores only eat meat. And omnivores eat plants and meat. So there's some examples there of different types. Now we call our herbivores primary consumers because they're the first in the line normally because they eat the plants. And we call our carnivores and our omnivores secondary consumers because they come next in the food chain. Some omnivores can come into primary sometimes. But for now, in year 2, we're going to call them all consumers. So we're going to look now at a simple food chain so you can see how we draw one and how we put all these living creatures together into one. So here's my simple food chain. I start at the bottom here with a plant. Well, a carrot comes from a plant. So it's our producer. And I've got here my two consumers. Now, as you can see, the arrows are pointing towards the thing that's eating, doing the eating. It shows the energy is being passed from this food to this creature. So a carrot energy is being passed on to the rabbit when he eats it. And the energy from the rabbit is being passed on to the fox when he eats the rabbit. Now, I've got up here the word predator because the fox is a predator. That means the fox hunts for its food. And the rabbit, it's its prey. So that's the first example of a food chain. Let's have a look at another example. Now this one here is found in a different habitat. Where do you think this one here is found? In the ocean, you're right. And it starts again with our producer, our seaweed, and the energy from the seaweed is passed on to a fish when he eats it. The fish is then eaten by the seal, so the energy is transferred to the seal. And then the seal is eaten by the shark. So in this one, you've got 4 creatures. Now, food chains can be very short. They can be 1 or 2 creatures, or they can be really, really long as well. This one here is a 4. My shark is my top predator, top of the food chain. Nothing really is going to try and eat my shark. Next, my seal is prey to the shark, but he's also a predator because he is a predator to the fish, and the fish is prey here. Now, it's really important that these food chains stay balanced. What do you think might happen, for example, if something from the food chain went missing, disappeared? What would happen, for example, if all of a sudden people were overfishing, fishing too much, and all the fish were taken away from this ocean habitat? What would happen first of all to the seaweed? Have a think. There's no fish eating that seaweed anymore, so that seaweed's going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. There's nothing to eat it. It'll overtake the ocean. What would happen to the seal? The seal's lost his dinner. If he can't eat anything, that means he's going to start dying out, and we'll have less seals. So if we have less seals, what's going to happen to the shark? He's going to die out too, because we have nobody for the shark to eat. So it's really important that we try and keep these food chains balanced, and that means we're trying to protect these creatures living in the food chains. Now I want to show you one last thing before I set you off on making your own food chains, and this is called a food web. Now, food chains in a habitat are never always just one thing eating one thing. Actually, food, like a producer, is food for a lot of different creatures. So this is how we show in a habitat multiple things eating the same thing. So with my grass here, you can see it's eaten by 3 consumers. We've got a rabbit, a caterpillar and a grasshopper eating that grass. Now the rabbit is eaten by the fox, but the fox also eats a sparrow. Now the sparrow eats the caterpillar, but the sparrow also eats grasshoppers, and the sparrow also eats berries. You can see these lines connecting them all together. The grasshopper's eaten by the mouse, but the mouse also likes to eat berries. And the mouse is eaten by the owl, and so is the sparrow here. So we call that a food web, and it shows all those interlinking creatures in the habitat and how they sort of work together. If one of these creatures is removed from the habitat for some reason, then it affects everything else in that food chain. Now you look at food webs more closely when you go into the juniors, but I thought I'd show you, in case you fancy having a look at it yourself now, how that would work as well. And that's it. That's all you need to know about food chains. So hopefully now you can tell me what a food chain is and talk about producers and consumers. Why don't you go away now, if you fancy it, and have a go at maybe drawing your own food chains like my one. You might need to research what different creatures eat before you do that one. Maybe you want to have a go at drawing your very own food web. Pick a habitat and draw who is eating what. Another activity I thought you might like to do, which I like doing with food chains, is to make your very own food chain paper chain. So what this is, it's a food chain which you can also hang up somewhere to decorate your house. So at the bottom I've got my producer, my plants, and I've added an extra link in between each of my consumers so I can really see clearly what's happening. So there's my plant, and that's eaten by an aphid type of bug, which is then eaten by the ladybird, which is then eaten by the bird. I'm sure my chain can be longer than that, but that's a 4-chain paper chain. Maybe you can make a really, really long one at home. And there we have it. I hope you've had fun today and you've learnt lots, and I will see you very soon for some more foundation learning.